Hello, my name is Alan Foom, and today I'm going to talk about discovered resource opportunities or oven-ready oil fields. So these are oil fields that are offered by government for development or rehabilitation. So this is my Marginal Field in Iraq, which is being rehabilitated by a multinational consortium, and this is the United Kingdom continental shelf, which contains many undeveloped oil discoveries. So we'll look at all of those. So why do Western oil companies need to acquire new resources? Now, the major Western majors have an average reserve production life of about 11 years. So if you take the proven reserves, divide that by the production rate, you get an average of 11 years, 14 years for Exxon, and 7 years for Equinor, used to be Statoil. Now, it doesn't mean that they'll stop producing in 7 years because they need to backfill their reserve space. And the whole aim of a company is to convert reserves into money. So you need to replace reserves by upgrading resources that you already discovered and gaining new resources and perhaps new reserves via various means. And the various means are the following. Now, I've done a video on this, skimming over these in some detail. So I'm going to talk mainly about this bit, the discovered resource opportunities. When you obtain discovered but not yet developed hydrocarbons from governments, and then you finance and execute their development. The other methods of doing it are ground floor exploration, and mergers and acquisitions. So best way to look at it is to look at the NP life cycle. So here you have exploration concepts and leads, very beginning, figments of a geologist's imagination. Exploration prospects, figments of a slightly less deranged geologist's imagination. Discoveries, when you actually find stuff. Fields to be appraised, developing fields, producing fields, and then late life fields. So ground floor exploration covers this thing. Finding new hydrocarbons. That's the only way new hydrocarbons are actually found. Somebody has to go out there, drill a wildcat well, risk all the capital, risk everything to gain that new hydrocarbons, which is challenging, complex, and difficult. But you can buy it from another company. So that's where M&A comes in. And you do M&A at all stages. So if someone has an attractive prospect, you can farm into that. That's M&A. You have a producing field, you buy some equity in that. That's M&A. You have late life producing assets, and there are specialist companies that do that. That's also M&A. But DRO covers this bit here. So from yet to be appraised discoveries, fields that are being appraised, fields that are being developed, and fields that are producing. They're mostly here within SPART in the pre-approval stage. So what are the different types of discovered resource opportunity? So you have really early stage. Someone's made a discovery, it's kind of marginal. Okay, let's offer it to someone else. Either in a tax royalty system, the previous operator has relinquished the block, the government has put that up for license again, see what happens there. You have a partially appraised discovery, may have technical challenges. So national oil companies discovered something and they really don't think they can manage it very effectively on their own for various reasons. I'll go into some of those. You can have enhancements in early life, field life, where they need capital to do that. You can have a development of associated gas, particularly linked with LNG. So you have significant extra gas, you need to get it to market. You have an LNG focused company coming in, and they will take part in the upstream as well. Midlife, enhanced oil recovery, late life, or redeveloping a commissioned field, which is also decommissioned field, which has also happened. So at all stages, but it's mostly the top part of that graph. Risks and rewards of TROs. Now, the risk tends to be low to moderate for developing a producing field, but there have been unpleasant surprises. Rewards, they tend to be on a per unit scale, actually low to moderate, because you've got to take the cost of acquisition, including any premiums, but there have been high reward examples, and also there's a scale of it. If you take part in a very large field, the unit profit may be relatively low, but you get a lot of it. Cost of acquisition, now this can be high. Obviously, it depends on the position of the host government. Quite often you have a competitive auction, so potentially high costs. And at-risk capital also tends to be very high because you're moving directly into the development stage. Also, it's new assets, it's now on a company balance sheet, and any value reduction, i.e. reserves write down, may be very painful. I'll talk a little bit about an example where that has happened. So why would a government offer a DRO? So there are political reasons. So for example, privatization. So countries like India, Mexico, Brazil, sometimes they would try to break up a state monopoly to get private capital in, whether it's foreign capital or whether it's local private capital. Or you can have independence, for example, countries in the former Soviet Union like Kazakhstan, so a new government is looking for allied foreign partners. It could be economic. So for example, the government doesn't have the money to develop the discovery, or they're cash constrained and they have better discoveries to develop. They're unwilling to risk money developing a challenging discovery. Again, we get someone else to take the risk. That's great. Or the government has other spending priorities. Or the technical problems, technical expertise within the NOC to do it, particularly it's a novel play, HPHD, sour gas, novel geographies, going into deep water, LNG tie-in, etc. So let's get some other people in to help us with that, or technical complexity. Okay, a little bit about petroleum resource ownership. Now, I've got a video on all of that, but you're basically three systems where you have this type of DRO. You have concession license systems such as UK and Norway. You can have a production sharing contract, for example, Egypt, Malaysia, Nigeria, India under the old system. Or you can have a service contract such as the old system in Mexico or Iran. So key thing here is the resource on a company balance sheet? So yes, in case of tax royalty, yes, but only the entitlement portion in the PSA, but not in the service contract. But in the service contract, you get cash revenue, but it's not on your balance sheet. Again, different ways of doing it, commercial licensing rounds or commercial deals with governments. Again, I have a video that looks at all of that. Key point here is you need to understand what you're doing in terms of coming into a DRO. Tendering, so this works like a license bid in many situations. So the government regulator announces the lease sale, companies evaluate the opportunities, submit bids, regulator evaluates bids, and regulator awards contracts. Now, sometimes you may have a government-to-government deal, particularly with an NOC, or you may approach the NOC directly or the government directly to try to get an out-of-round award. Again, different ways of doing it, but this is a competitive tender, which is quite normal. Country dependence bid evaluation. So you could have a cash bid where you basically buy the resource from the government. You can bid on a work program. You can bid on government shares, rates of returns, or a combination of all the above. So you may also have mandatory participation by a national oil company. Production license may have a fixed term or maybe for field life. It depends on the terms of the country. Pitfalls of evaluating a DRO. Now, like an M&A, where you're buying reserves on a company, evaluations can have their pitfalls. Now, you can have limited time to evaluate things. The data may not be standard formats. Could have different reporting standards, for example, in the former Soviet Union. Could be language issues, so for the Soviet Union, Middle East. I happen to be a Russian speaker, говорю на русском языке, могу делать технические переводы. So for me, for example, I went into the data room once on something in Kazakhstan, and I could find something in there that a non-Russian speaking geologist would not be able to do. So you need geologists and engineers that understand the language and culture of that particular country. Now, they'll disclose all material facts in the data room, but the evaluation team might not be able to spot them. They might take inappropriate analogs when they have a relatively narrow experience, and the bidding can take on a life of its own, driven by ambitious executives. So technical risks, well, why is the field being offered? That's the thing you really need to answer. What the challenges does it face? Now, it could be structural complexity, such as compartmentalization, reservoir complexity, could be relatively small size, could be gas caps with oil rims, relatively low relief, high pressure, high temperature, complex fluids with H2S or wax, maybe remote from existing infrastructure, lack of market for gas, synergy with LNG, if that's what your company maybe offer. So you need to build reservoir models and have a robust technical challenge, but you have a limited time to do this, and that can be a bit difficult. Joint ventures. Now, quite often you may need to set up a joint venture. It depends obviously on the country. In Egypt, for example, you set up a joint venture, which may include secondees from both IOCs and NOCs. The local private companies may also be included in partners. And I was worked once in a joint venture in India where we had that. We had a national company, we had a local private company together. NOCs might be carried to expenditure. This isn't actually very common, but sometimes it does happen, and you cost recover that during production. And you need to very carefully work on the relationship with the partners, particularly when they're from a different culture, to make it all reasonably harmonious, and you need to be carefully work together to try to succeed. An example from the North Sea, so it's not just countries in the developing world that offer it. For example, UK and Norway have quite a few undeveloped discoveries, and this is from the UK Oil and Gas Authority. This is a map of the UKCS, United Kingdom Continental Shelf. That's Great Britain. That's the North Sea. That's the Irish Sea. And all of these dots are undeveloped discoveries. Then relinquished blocks. Original operator felt discovery was sub-economic. New operator might have new ideas, new technology, as well as different economic thresholds. So that might make it work. And the UK government has been pushing this through the pilot initiative to try to get these undeveloped discoveries a new go. Sometimes it could be commercial issues. For example, the discovery might need to go through a pipeline to a host facility, and there might be commercial uh, difficulties, and the government tries to sort those out. There's also redevelopment of fields that have ceased production. One particularly interesting one is Argyle, which is the first field to be produced in the UKCS, was previously operated by Hamilton Brothers. Then it got decommissioned, got recommissioned by a new group of people, and was called Alma, and then recommissioned by Enquest as a field called Ardmore with new facilities and new wells. But some fields will always have issues and will just not go anywhere. So if we look at some examples, this is Karachaganak at Kazakhstan, a field I'd worked on. Again, tendered out after independence to a consortium with ENI and the company I used to work for, BG Group. Various other companies, Texaco and who's now Chevron, and Lukoil came in, and also KMG, the state Kazakh oil company, came in, and it's been quite a successful development. This is Pana and Mukta in India, another field I've worked on, where we had a joint venture, where BG had a joint venture with ONGC and Reliance Energy, the largest private company in India. Again, it was initially tendered out to Enron. We subsequently bought Enron's share when Enron collapsed. I had to spend a couple of weeks in the data room in Houston when all this was happening. But again, very fascinating field, Eocene limestones, large gas cap with an oil rim. We're drilling horizontal wells into here. Field in Iraq I've mentioned before. This is Dai Hung in Vietnam. This is a field we bid on, but thankfully didn't win. The company that did win it found out very significant problems. It was initially called Big Bear, so Dai Hung means big bear in Vietnamese. It subsequently got renamed to Teddy Bear. This is FPSO over Alma in the North Sea, and this is Kesog, which is a field next to another field which I used to work on, which unfortunately has a problem with its fluids and might never ever get developed. So these are some examples of potential DROs that have happened. So summarize, DROs are very tempting way of getting reserves. They can be seen as oven-ready hydrocarbons. Well, they're not quite oven-ready. They do generate and may generate significant value and give you a long-term production base. They have lower technical risk, obviously, than exploration, but there's still some risk. And reserves, although moderate on a unit basis, may actually be quite large in scale. But you've got large capital expenditures and a lot of capital risk. Also, if you need to write down reserves because things have gone wrong, it's going to be quite embarrassing. There may be large acquisition costs because you may have to bid that up front, depending obviously on the country. You have a JV with an NOC, which may be a little resentful of having a bunch of foreigners come into their country, so it needs careful management and diplomacy to make things work effectively. There have been unpleasant surprises, and you have to ask yourself, why is it a DRO? And if you can't answer that, then you perhaps shouldn't really look at it that carefully. And like other methods, can be very successful. So thank you very much. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.